everybody, I hope y'all are having a good day. I hope y'all are having a good week. My name is Nydia and this is my channel about non-duality with a little bit of twin flame, although you are your own twin flame, so that is just a story. Anyhow, I'd like to make a video today sort of answering a question about the mind and how decisions and things are made. Somebody had made a comment a while back about this topic, and I have to go back and search that question. I may elaborate a little bit more, but I've been out of town, and just as I sat here today, I just recently returned from a family vacation, but as I sat here today, I was going to speak about something else, and then I just got a feeling to speak about the mind and how decisions and things are made. And I remember that there was a comment regarding the brain or the mind and how decisions and things are made. How is it that that happens? So this will kind of go along with that. And if I miss anything regarding that question, I will certainly make a follow-up video to it. I'll have to go back and search that question. So if y'all have any questions about anything you'd like me to make videos about, please send me an email. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe to my channel, like and comment anything that you'd like about it. So as far as the mind goes, the mind and the brain are together. So they function together, and that is, you can look into psychology. There's all kinds of information about that. So within this illusion, we are separate beings. We have separate minds. We have psychology. There's brain functions that occur certain ways and this and that. And all of that is happening within the illusion. All of that you can research. All of that feels very real here in this illusion. But what I'm speaking about, we are not separate. Everything is one. Everything is just happening, or you could even say it's not even one. It's just happening to no one, really. It's all just happening. So this illusion has the sense that we have a mind, a brain that tells us and makes decisions for us and helps us or hurts us or whatever, however you want to see it. The way that I see it, especially after this realization, is that the mind is just happening like anything else happens. Like, you know, if I sneeze right now, just like that happens. Any thoughts that are happening within the mind, any decisions that are happening within the mind are just happening like everything else is happening. So nothing is special and unique and separate. So the mind can't be separate from the self, or can't be separate from what is, or can't be separate from whatever. Everything, as I see it, is just happening, and it's all the same ingredient just happening. It has no purpose, it has no meaning. So to really talk about the mind or the brain is not really of interest anymore to me, although my background is in psychology, and I've definitely studied a lot of psychology and neuroscience and things like that in my past. But a lot of that has fallen away because a lot of that was beliefs, was information that doesn't serve what I'm speaking about today. What I'm speaking about doesn't need any of that information to be. That's all beautiful and interesting, but there's nothing there that is of substance to me any longer. It's all very interesting, though. It all only makes me see what a miracle everything just is as it's happening. But anyhow, regardless of all of those things I just mentioned, decisions and things apparently do happen, and it does feel that we are doing them, and it does feel that there is a pattern, there's a correlation, there's cause and effect. It does feel that maybe some people are following certain paths that are bringing them to these situations that they're currently in, or whatever. So it certainly looks that way. But essentially everything's just happening. And our brain and our decisions and everything like that aren't really our own, as in they're Nydia's thoughts, they're Nydia's decisions, and this and that. It appears that way, but when this is seen, it's seen that it's not actually happening to Nydia. It's just happening. It's just happening like the sun rises and shines that day. It's just happening. So it has no meaning for me to look into it further or whatnot, but I can tell you what I think. I can tell you what it appears to me after this realization. So the way that things function, the way that I see that they happen, from my perspective, is that it's just happening based on your conditioning, how you grew up, what you've experienced so far in life, the beliefs that you hold, the thoughts that you pay attention to. So every decision that's made, it takes all of those things into consideration. Now, I'm just speaking within the illusion. Of course, none of that is real. But if we're speaking about what is happening here, what that question is alluding to, the one that was talking about how people make decisions and such, that's all within the illusion. So all of that is just already even just happening. Even within the illusion, you're not doing it. Even if you think, okay, there's two worlds. There isn't two worlds. Everything's just already here and happening all at once. So, but if you want to think about it, compartmentalize it, and think about it in, your individual self, examine your upbringing, examine your beliefs, examine your thoughts. And you will see that all of the decisions and things that you're making, you're not really in control of. They're already just happening based on that trajectory of whatever it is that you've been conditioned to so far. So just like if I was to line up a bunch of dominoes and knock one over, all of those dominoes would fall down, right? And then at the end, that last one would fall down as well. Now, what the person or the I wants to say is that last domino, oh, I did it. I did that. I knocked it down. I've knocked down the last domino. But in reality, it just was all happening. It was just all happening. It was all happening in that trajectory until that very last one fell. Now, that's just a very simple analogy that may or not make sense to that. But it's just to say that all of these course of events to where you are now, you weren't in control of. You weren't making all of those other dominoes fall and do these things. That first domino, wherever it is that you supposedly apparently were born into, whatever family, whatever belief systems, religions, dogmas, or whatever, those set the course of everything that's happened so far up until now. And so all of that's just happening, like I say, within this dream. It's not that you're doing it. It's not that it's right or wrong. It's not that you're good or bad, or you're making good decisions or bad decisions. It's just all happening. So there's no personal ownership there of any decision or not decision or indecision or whatever. Everything is just happening. Now, the brain does function. Like I say, you can study it in science, but that I don't speak of here because it's no longer of importance. When it's seen that everything is just happening, there's no desire there to know all of these things. It's like you already know the answers to the test. So why would I go back and study all of these things when I can just know what the answers are? Now, I'm not saying that I know anything that anybody else knows. Everything is still unknowable. How is this all happening? Why, even if I explain it as conditioning or that this or that, that may not necessarily be right. So that's all unknowable. But what is known is what is prior to this dream. And that is nothingness, where I know that all of everything else is seen as a total illusion. So if you see everything as a total illusion, there's no point in studying it or figuring it out. How does it work and this and that? Of course, you know, even within this world, there are so many studies and things, and all of that stuff is great, and it's happening because it should be happening. So I'm not saying it shouldn't happen. Anything that should happen is going to be happening. But for me personally, from my standpoint, from this character that does these sorts of things, it's no longer of importance to me. And for the general population, it really shouldn't be of importance as well. Um, you know, unless that is what you were meant to be here, if that is your unique nature, that you study the brain or you study the mind or whatever, that may be the purpose of that. But there is really no purpose. Even that is not a purpose. Because prior to the mind, the brain, these appearances that we are, there was nothingness, and there is still nothingness. It's just nothing. So when there is nothing, there is nothing to know about it. It's all just happening. There's no one to gain information from anything else. That's separation, where I want to know this about this brain that I don't know anything about. The brain is not separate from what is. The brain is everything that's happening as well. The brain is what's happening as well. So to me, to want to get to know the brain or do this or that, it just doesn't make much sense. But of course, there's two sides to the coin. There's everything and nothingness. And even though it is nothing, it's appearing as something. So I could study the brain if I wanted to, if that's my passion, if that's what I want to do within this illusion, I can do that, and that would be perfectly fine. That would be, you know, if it's especially something that you love, that is something that is completely accepted and okay. But from where I'm speaking of it, I'm talking about what I'm experiencing, and it's not that the brain has anything to offer, really. The brain is just going to happen. I can't stop the brain. So even though I say the brain has nothing to offer, it's not like I can just shut my brain off and just forget the brain and throw it out. No, the brain continues to happen just like every other bodily function happens, or anything else in the world functions, like the seasons, or, you know, like I say, bodily functions or whatever. It's all going to still continue, whether I find it to have value in my current reality or not. But it's seen here that there is no one. So all of that does not matter. Now, to make decisions, how are decisions made? Are we even making decisions? The way that I see it, there is no one to make the decisions. So I can't be making the decisions. Everything is just happening. And even science has found that the brain begins to function and do things in response to something that hasn't even been introduced to the person. So even a few seconds before a question's even asked, the person's brain is starting to answer that. So there's even evidence in this illusion of this. So even within the illusion, there's a scientific sort of explanation for some of these things that I'm speaking of, or not even explanations, but just evidence of it, I guess. So as far as making decisions and making videos and things like that, I wake up in the morning just like everybody else, just like before. I have things I need to do. I have to make decisions. I have to do certain things. And all of that is just happening, even just how it used to happen before the realization. Nothing has really changed. So everything just continues to happen. I make a decision and it feels like I've made that decision, and whatever I do that, whatever it is, and whatever happens in result of that is just what happens. But it's seen that I'm not doing it, and it's just all happening. So there's not a lot of thoughts behind that. There's not a lot of personalization behind that, oh, I made the wrong decision, or I made the greatest decision, I'm the greatest person ever. There's nothing personal with it. It's just happening as it's happening. So, and one of the things that's kind of difficult to explain and difficult to understand um, is how someone could even make a decision. Like, are we making decisions like in watching this video, or in, like, let's say seeking therapy, or doing anything to change ourselves or better ourselves? Let's talk about self-improvement. How is it that anybody can self-improve or do anything if no one is doing it? And the truth is, no one is doing it, but it is all appearing this way. So there is going to be a decision made. So if you do have, let's say, a problem going on and you're thinking about seeking therapy, there is going to be a decision of whether or not you seek therapy or not. Now, if you've realized this and none of that stuff matters to you, then you won't seek therapy. But even if you have realized this, but you've realized this and you're seeing some things that you want to look into, work on, whatever, there's going to be a decision. And prior to even this realization, I'm sure there's things that we all do to self-improve ourselves, supposedly, even though we're not doing it. Like, there's characters, there's people that, you know, work on their body, they work out all the time. There's characters that work on a specific skill or trait that they improve and try to perfect and work on and improve. And, you know, we try to do the best by our children, our families, and things like that. That's all happening. The difference is I'm not doing it. Even if I'm working really hard, reading all these books about parenting and doing this and that, that's not me doing it. Just the same as if I worked really hard and I failed at something, or I made a mistake, I'm not doing that either. It's just all happening. Now, what's been realized, and this came a bit after the realization of no self and everything and nothingness, the realization of infinity. And I will make a video on that specifically because I love that topic. It's just a little difficult to speak of. So what we are is infinite. It's everything. So I'm appearing as a finite being here speaking to you, but after this realization, it's realized that who I'm speaking to through this camera on your screen is the same as me. So we are one. We are the same. This couch, I have my dog sitting here. We are all the same. We are the same ingredient that flows through us, that is life. So all of that is realized. And so in infinity, everything and anything can happen. Infinity means everything and anything that has happened, will happen, can ever happen, anything and everything. So, you know, infinity goes on and on forever and ever and ever, even though there is no forever because there's no time or space. So prior to this illusion, there's no time and space. And I've spoken about this in other videos, and you can go back and search my video on space-time or time and space, and that should pop up and you can read that. Or not read that, you can watch that. So in that video, in one of those videos, I made an analogy of, and I'm not sure if it was specifically to this, but that space-time, or what is we think is time, is already all here at once. So if we think about it like a cake, already a baked cake with frosting and everything, you know, sprinkles, everything you can think of on this cake, double layers, filling, you know, this flavor, maybe it's marbled, all of this stuff. The cake is there, and we can think of that as infinity. It is an infinite cake. It has everything that we can imagine as a cake. In that cake, or that cake itself, there's different ingredients, there's different actions that went in to bake it. So all of that is infinity. I'm just trying to demonstrate like that it's full. It's fullness, right? It's everything. In that cake, we just cut a sliver maybe off the end, and that is what we're going to eat. Well, right now, that is what we are. That little sliver of cake that we are eating. We're right now in that space-time, right there in that apparent time and space, experiencing this. So if I make the decision to make the video in this little point in space and time, then that's what's going to be happening. I'm not making that decision, but I can feel like I am making that decision. But in that same token, in some other part of that cake, I'm not making this video. It's still, all of this is still happening, but I'm not making this video. Or another sliver in time in that cake, I'm haven't had this realization, or I have a completely different job or a completely different life. So in infinity, anything and everything can happen to everything. So anything that you can imagine that's ever happened and could happen to me is happening somewhere already here in space and time, in that cake somewhere. That cake is already in existence, but we're only eating or experiencing a part of that cake that we're eating. So, but all of it already exists. So if I was to make the decision to do something else, other than, if I'm going to make the decision, instead of making this video, that I'm going to do something completely opposite of this, that I'm going to start doing something that's going to hurt me, like I'm going to go out and find drugs, that could happen. That is happening already somewhere in this space and time, somewhere in what is infinity. That is happening. But in my current reality, in what I feel like I am right now in this point in space and time, I'm choosing to make a video. Okay, so that's what's happening now. That's the only thing that's being experienced now, is what's happening. But we can imagine, after having this realization, that everything is already in existence. There is different versions of me. There is different versions of universes. There is aliens. There is ghosts. There is whatever you can imagine and put your attention to exists somewhere or another. So we're not necessarily making these decisions, but the way I see it, and it's so hard for me to explain this part, is whatever whatever point of space and time you're in, you're going to be resonating with certain things. And that's like what I'd like to call the intuition and stuff like that. And that's where I make a lot of my decisions from. Even though I'm not making them, I feel the difference, that it feels like I'm making decisions through intuition. I'm not making decisions. Everything's just happening. But where I used to feel like I was making decisions with my brain and my mind and all my knowledge and all my experiences, that may or may not still be happening, but after the realization, you're not so much in the mind. So now I'm more in the heart, and I'm making decisions from intuition, from resonance. And that's what it feels like, as you know, as a person that's experiencing something, even though there's no one experiencing it, there's a sense of where something's coming from. Even though nothing is coming from anything, no one is experiencing anything, it appears this way, because I'm sure you could say, I'm making this decision with my brain right now. You know, I feel I'm making this decision through intuition, because I'm not in my thoughts, in my brain, thinking these things. So when a decision comes up for me to do something, and I'm not resonating with it, for example, drugs. Currently, drugs have I've never been into drugs, but if drugs were offered to me, even though I have this knowledge, supposedly, or this seeing, or this realization that there is no selves, that everything is happening, all this and that, even though I supposedly have this realization, I'm not going to choose to do drugs, even though nothing matters. I mean, I could essentially go do drugs or do anything I want, and essentially nothing matters. It's not affecting me as a person, as anything. I'm not this person. I'm not this body. So a lot of people get fearful with this message, thinking that if they really believe this, or if they really had this realization, that they would automatically go out and commit crimes, become murderers, rapists, who knows. The truth is, that's not going to happen, because when you have this realization, or any time in your life, you're going to gravitate towards the things that you resonate with. And that's what you're going to do. So if you've had this realization, it's pretty unlikely that you'll resonate with something like doing drugs. Although it can happen, it's pretty unlikely, the way I see it. Because what you're resonating with is not that. So what you're resonating with is more, I hate to categorize things as positive or negative, but they can clearly be seen, especially by the human, as what would be positive or negative for a person. So after this realization, you resonate more with peace, with love, because that is your true nature. So you're going to resonate with things that are true, that are your true nature. When you're feeling small, when you're wanting to escape, when you're feeling hopeless, when you're feeling like you want to be something else, you would resonate more with drugs or something like that, like an addiction that would help you to escape your current feelings, reality, whatever. But when you have this realization, you realize that you're infinite. You realize that what you are is eternal. You realize what you are is not this body, is not this person speaking. You are everything. And you have an overlaying thing I like to call unconditional love. And when you have unconditional love, you have unsurpassing peace. And when you have unsurpassing peace and love, you have no desire to escape. You have no desire to do anything that would cause chaos or whatever. You just are peaceful and you're content. So it's very unlikely that these things will happen. So how are decisions made, or what is the brain or the mind's function after a realization like this? Well, everything's just going to happen how it's happening. You have no control of it, essentially. But what seems to shift, just like the perception of what is shifts, is also your resonance and what you are resonating with. So when some people ask, like, what's the point of watching these videos? What's the point of doing this or that if no one's doing it, if nothing has a purpose? It's just because what's happening. So if you're resonating with this sort of material, or you're resonating with whatever, that's what's happening, and you have no control of it. That's just what you're resonating with. So right now, you're resonating with watching non-duality YouTube videos, where, you know, maybe at some other point in your life, you were resonating with watching sports videos, and you're maybe a sports fan of just one team, and that was all you were into, or whatever. Maybe you're resonating with videos about depression or anxiety. You know, depending on whatever's happening, you're going to resonate with those sorts of things. So if you're resonating with this now, this is what you're going to be watching. Are you going to have a realization? Is something going to happen from this? I don't know. But obviously you are on the path of this sort of thing, or you're resonating with this sort of thing. So decisions and the brain and the mind, they're all happening. They continue to happen. The more you resonate with this message, the more you resonate with, if you have the realization of no self, of nothingness, you will come from a place of intuition, I'd like to say, not so much from the mind and brain, because nothing is worth knowing or really understanding all the way anymore. It's just, you follow that resonance, you follow that intuition, you follow whatever fits in line with love and peace, with which is what you are, whatever fits in line with infinity, with everything, with being eternal, with not dying, not living or dying. You're not going to resonate with fear. You're not going to resonate with anything like that. When you have this realization, like I said, I made a video about certain emotions cannot exist after this realization. I mean, anything can happen, but the way I see it it's almost nearly impossible from my experience to be able to resonate or fall into a fearful mentality or a self-hatred or self-destruction or any of that, because there's no self anymore. There's nothing there. There's nothing to self-destruct. If anything, you love what is, even though it's not necessarily you anymore. You love everything because everything is you. You love your enemies. You love everything, every part of this supposed, or supposed reality that we're in. You love it all because it's all essentially what you are. It's just all being experienced in different points of space and time in this little finite being right now that you are. But really, everything's already in existence. Everything's already there and not there. Everything's already existing. Every possibility that you could be, every life that you could live, every experience that anything could have is already happening right now. So right now is all there is. It's happening, and then it's also not happening because there's no one. There's nothing. It's just nothingness. So all of this is here and now. Whatever you are now, you're going to follow and make decisions based on, if you haven't had this realization and you're very stuck in supposedly the ego, which is all an illusion as well, you're going to use the brain and the mind a lot more to make decisions. That brain and mind is something that's been conditioned over time since you've been supposedly born. However you're raised, whatever your beliefs are, whatever experiences you've had and what you've learned from them, you're going to use all of that to make your decisions. Now, you're not using it, it's just happening. But I'm trying to make an example of how it happens. After this realization, you no longer have beliefs. There is just no beliefs to be had. No belief is real. There's just no beliefs. Now, I can still say something is stupid. I can still say, I don't believe what that politician is saying. I don't believe this. That's stupid, this and that. But it's all lighthearted. It's just, this character has these already preferences and experiences or whatever. But over all of that, now it's seen that all of that it's all an illusion. It's all false. So even though I could say those things, I'm not truly sitting there believing that and saying, oh, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to take him out of power, I'm going to do, such and such to make sure that that information isn't spread. No, it's realized that whatever's happening with that person or that situation is just happening like anything is happening with me. So I have no desire to do any of those things. So beliefs fall away. Thoughts essentially fall away, and when they do still happen, and when they do still happen, they're back here. They're not front and center, and they're quickly discerned. So when a thought comes through that is clearly outside of what I believe I am, even though it's not a belief, it's just what is. When these thoughts come through of, oh, you are helpless, you are going to have a horrible life, you've lost your job, this or that, you're not going to be able to support your family. When those thoughts come through, it's automatically seen through after having this realization that that's completely false. Because what I am is infinite, what I am is eternal, what I am cannot be wiped out. What I am, sorry, something was at the door. What I am is not powerless. What I am is not lacking. What I am is abundant. What I am is everything. So when these thoughts come through that are of lack or of being a victim or being in a situation of helplessness, those thoughts do not survive, not even 1 second. They may come through and that's it, because they can't survive when there's no self to think that that is real. They can't come through when there is no idea or thought that that is even true, because what I am is not that. What I am is not this body. It can't be. So these thoughts that don't align with what the truth that has been seen is, they just don't survive. So that's why I made that other video. You can go back and watch that. It's called Why Certain Emotions Cannot Survive. They just can't, unless, you know, maybe there's something else going on, which anything can happen. So that there could be somebody that's realized this or supposedly had a glimpse, which I haven't had, so I can't speak to. You know, somebody had a glimpse of this in a certain level of understanding, yet there is still like a strong sense of self or something. That could possibly be that the thoughts are still being heard. But the way I see it, and the way it really is, there is nothing in reality, apparent reality here, that can hurt you, that can limit you, that can destroy you. Nothing. What you are is not this. So even if somebody came in here right now and killed me, that would just be another happening. But what I am doesn't die there. This character might die at that moment in space and time, but what I am doesn't die. It continues on and on and on in infinite ways and appearances and expressions. I'm not just limited to this body, to this person named Nydia that was born here supposedly and had these parents. I'm not limited to that. It's a lot more than that. So going back to the brain and the mind, that is just another happening. That's just another function of what happens with the human being. You know, animals have brains, all of this stuff, and a lot of their functioning is more instinct based. The human, when they're in their brain and in their mind, is more cerebral. It is in their brain and in their mind. After this seeing, the human goes to being more intuitive, okay, being more out of resonance, going with those things that there's resonance there. If there is, like, if somebody came in here and said, hey, let's do this scam to scam all of these people to get this money that we want because we want to have all this money and do all this stuff, that's not going to resonate with me at all. Nothing at all about that's going to resonate with me. But for the person that's stuck more in the ego and the mind, you know, and the sense of self, they're going to think, oh, I'm going to be rich and I can do this quick and this and that, and they're going to fall into that. So it just depends on where, you know, what your situation is, whatever is happening with you. Not that you're doing it, just what's happening with you. Are you working out more from the brain and the mind, or are you working more from intuition, the heart, or whatever you want to call it? It doesn't even really matter to speak about this because there's nothing you can really do about it. But if you're resonating with watching these videos, I'd be more inclined to say that you're probably in resonating and functioning more out of intuition. But if you haven't had this realization, you may still be using a lot of the mind and the brain and the ego and all of that has been conditioned over time. You know, society conditions us to feel like we are experiencing lack, that something's going to go wrong, that we should be part of this in order to have that, to manipulate, to lie, to steal, and all this stuff to get ahead. So society is already programming all of these things, just the way it's happening. It's not right or wrong, it's just what's happening. So those things very much could be, you know, interfering with your decision making and things like that. When this is seen, when you have this realization, all of those feelings of lack, all of those feelings of wanting anything for the self, all fall away. So you can't be manipulated. You can't feel like you're lacking anything. You can't feel like things aren't going to be taken care of. Just like anything else in nature, it survives or doesn't survive, but whatever happens is going to happen. Generally, life does take care of life. So if I lose my job, if, you know, my house burns down or whatever, yeah, that wouldn't be the most pleasant thing. and I would probably experience some emotion that's in line with that happening, like sadness or whatever. But what's seen here is that everything's already happening, has happened, will happen. Everything's already in control. Everything is already in harmony. Everything that's going to happen, will happen, whatever, is life supporting life. It's just happening through me, however it wants to happen. Whether I understand what the purpose of it or not is, doesn't matter. Essentially, there is no purpose. But if there was or whatever, it's seen here that it's all okay. It's all supported. Because what is prior to all of this, what I am, what this is nothingness, which is infinity, which is eternal, which is love. All of those things just are. They don't need anything to survive. They don't need money. They don't need health. They don't need anything. It's already just going to survive. It's already there. It's prior to space and time. It's prior to all of that. It will never die off. It doesn't need anything in order to survive. So there's just no threat there anymore. And that's why a lot of people who have realized this, they're not fighters. They're not trying to convert everybody. They're not trying to take a stand against this or that. If anything, they're very quiet and they're living their lives somewhere, probably not even speaking about this. And I myself don't speak about this to friends, family, anybody. I don't see the reason to. Everything that's happening with those people is what's supposed to be happening. Now, if they want to ask something or if there's some space for that, I will definitely share because it is very beautiful. And the way I see it, I would certainly love to give that as a gift to somebody, but I realize that everything is just happening how it's happening, and it's perfect. It's perfect. However it's happening, even if we say or somebody says, no, that's horrible, that's happening that way or whatever, it's not really happening. So it's not really the tragedy you think it is. This is just all happening like a dream. And in a dream, we don't go back in a dream and try to analyze what was that character in the dream thinking, what was his brain patterns, what was his upbringing, why did he make that decision. It's just, you wake up from a dream and it's a dream and just realize, wow, that was crazy. It was just happening the way it was happening. So that's what this is when it's realized. It's just realized like, wow, I wasn't really doing that. I'm not really that. And you just take a breath and move on. It's not anything to hang on to. Everything is very impermanent. Everything is very much changing all the time. Everything is very much new all the time. And that is the actual reality. So nothing's really going to change when you have this realization. You're still going to be in the same house. You're still going to have the same family. All this and that. Maybe some things will fall away and shed, like beliefs, and maybe you'll change your job, do different things like that. But essentially, you are still here in this point of space and time, experiencing this experience. But what you'll realize is the only thing that has really changed is your perspective of what you think reality is and what you think you are. Because what you are is what everything is. And what everything is an illusion. And illusions have no meaning, have no purpose, have no consequence, have nothing to hold on to, have nothing to fight for. And while that may sound pretty depressing, it's very liberating. And that's where that word liberation comes from, that so many speakers and people talk about. So I've talked about a lot of things today, and I haven't really talked about specifically neuroscience or the brain or the mind. And I did that on purpose because that's not what this is. If you want to learn neuroscience, if you want to learn psychology, look up some videos on that. It is very interesting. And within this reality, within this illusion, that is what's appearing to happen in some ways. You know, there's people that study that, but that's not what I'm speaking of here. I'm speaking of what this is, what you are, and I'm not speaking of the brain specifically. But the way decisions are made and things like that, I wanted to touch a little bit on that. So that is just happening, but there does seem to be a shift from the brain to the heart after a realization. Decisions still get made every day. They're being made before a realization, they're being made after realization, they're being made in this illusion. So there's no fear there that decisions won't be made. I've also had questions where people are very fearful of having this realization, or maybe they're resonating with these videos and things, and they're so fearful that when they lose the sense of self, even though there's nothing really to lose and there's nothing to gain or nothing really happening, they have the sense that they're no longer going to function, that they're no longer going to be able to make decisions, that they're no longer going to be able to go to work, they're no longer going to be able to support their family. There might be changes in their life if they aren't being authentic to themselves. That may happen. But essentially, decisions are always going to be made. They were being made before, they're being made now, they're already made. So whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So this is just a bunch of rambling, really, because it's not anything we can really control or do. But it feels like we are. So I wanted to make this video in response to that question. So if y'all have any other questions about this or anything, comment down below. I love to get y'all's comments or emails regarding questions. I do offer one-on-one sessions as well if you want to email me to do that. If you like the video, and if you're new and like these sorts of videos, please subscribe to my channel and come back. Thanks for watching.